Welcome back to this special budget preview, Dalley edition. Joining me now is Coalition frontbencher, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Alan Tudge, and he's in... Alan Tudge, hopefully you can hear me.
Oh, I can just hear you now. Hi, Helen. How you going?
Hi there. I've just introduced you, given you a big wrap. But anyway, we'll get straight into it now. The government has moved seemingly 180 degrees away from the budget repair the deficit stance of last year's budget to now be repeating the mantra of fairness and now spending. That's a giant about-face, isn't it?
Well, last year we had a budgetary situation which we had to get on top of, and we introduced measures to turn the budget from an unmanageable situation into a manageable situation. And when you saw through the intergenerational report, we've made a huge difference through last year's budget. Now, we've got to continue the hard work.
So are you saying the deficit that you'll announce tomorrow night will be manageable?
I'm saying that we've gone, last year we had an unmanageable situation, and moving forward we've now got largely the finances somewhat under control, but we've still got a lot more work to do to get on top of Labor's debt and deficit disaster. Now, you said we've got a lot more spending proposals on the table, and yes, we do have some spending proposals, but every single one is offset by savings as well, because we can't give up on this budget repair job, and we won't be.
All right, but that doesn't actually go to repairing the deficit. That is going to pay for the spending that you're going to do. Any savings you get is not repairing the deficit.
Well, the spending announcements which we have made are all offset by expenditure savings within the budget,
right,
and
so
within
that's
each
not budget
portfolio.
repair,
but additionally,
is it?
Additionally, Helen, there's also other savings measures which we have will be putting in place. For example, today we announced that we'll be selling off some additional assets, which will raise some funds as well. Joe Hockey has announced additional measures to crack down on multinational tax avoidance, which will raise an additional revenue also. All of those go towards the budget repair job. We have not given up on this task, and we're the only political party that is committed to again having the budget back into surplus.
All right.
And that's what we're working towards.
I just want to pin you down to what you said at the beginning. You said that the deficit will be manageable, the finances are manageable. You will be announcing an increased deficit tomorrow night, no doubt. Are you saying that's manageable?
No, what I'm saying is that we inherited a huge budget. We inherited a huge fiscal challenge when we came into government.
But it's going to be worse tomorrow night.
$50 billion deficits for as far as the eye could see. But what we've done, particularly on the spending side, Helen, which is where you're going towards, when we came to office, expenditure growth was 3.7% real per annum ongoing into the future. And last year's budget changed that spending trajectory to being only 1% real growth ongoing into the future. Now that makes a huge difference, and when you look into the future, that means we've halved the debt trajectory which we inherited from Labor. So we've made a substantial difference, but we've got a lot more work to do, and I don't want to understate that. We still have a lot more work to do, and that means that every single spending proposal is offset by savings measures, plus there's additional revenue or savings measures as well. All
right, the childcare overhaul is really your centrepiece, but even the Productivity Commission thinks that childcare handouts should not go to wealthier working families. But you are still planning to give families earning over $180,000 a year 50% of their childcare costs back. That is spending more than you need to, isn't it?
Helen, I would not call childcare benefits a handout. What they are is they're a mechanism to support parents going back to work. And that's the key change. But it was the wealthier families that I was asking you about, on those very high incomes. And it still tapers off. So the greatest benefit are for the lower income families and the middle income families, and then the benefit tapers off as you get wealthier. But let me point out that this was also the case with the existing childcare rebates, where it did apply, of course, to higher income earners as well. So it's no difference on that front. But what it does is fades out those benefits over time. The important point is, though, the one that I said at the start, this is not a welfare measure. This is a employment measure because it supports men and women, parents, to get back into the workforce should they choose to do so.
All right, one of your own Conservative side columnist, Janet Albrechtsen, she called it a handout to have any sort of rebate going to wealthier working families. That's not really ending the age of entitlement, as Joe Hockey pronounced was his guiding principle, is it?
Again, I would not call that a handout. It's not welfare. It's not a gift or a handout, as Janet Albrechtsen might say. It is a measure only to support those people who are going back into the workforce. And as you know, Helen, there are many families who sit round the kitchen table and have to determine, does that actually make economic sense for them to go back into the workforce when they take into account the childcare expenses? And we want to make a difference there. And on average, for the average person, they'll be $30 better off as a result of this measure. And we think this will result in an extra couple 100,000 people being more likely to go back into the workforce or increase their hours in the workforce. Now, what does that mean? That means overall the economy can be stronger. It means there's more revenue coming into the budget. It means there's more services which we can spend money on.
All right, I was asking you about just the higher earning families, but to pay for the childcare spending that you're doing, you want to pay for it only by getting your changes to the family tax benefit B passed. They were rejected last year by Labor and the crossbench senators. What makes you think they'll be passed now?
Well, we're having ongoing discussions with those crossbench senators, and what the Labor Party doesn't understand, but we do deep in our veins, is that if you have an additional spending measure, the money has to come from somewhere. The money doesn't grow on trees, and you can't just keep putting expenditure on the government credit card as the Labor Party did. So with every expenditure measure we have, there's an offsetting savings measure, and the offsetting savings measure in this instance is the family tax benefit Part B changes. And so the crossbenchers know that
so you think you will get it passed this year? Because it's already been rejected.
Well, we're having good constructive conversations with the crossbenchers, and I don't want to put words into their mouths, but we're having constructive conversations, and I think that they realise, unlike the Labor Party, that to invest more money into something like childcare, you also have to be able to find the money in the first instance.
All right, you were also talking about, Joe Hockey was talking today about changes to go after the unpaid tax that is avoided by large multinational companies by strengthening the current anti-avoidance legislation. Now, isn't it a big sticking point, though, that to go after these unpaid taxes, as we understand it, the ATO must prove the companies go into these offshore arrangements for the dominant reason to get a tax benefit? Now, that's going to be very hard, near impossible to prove, isn't it?
Well, we're going to be outlining we'll be placing some draft legislation on the table tomorrow night to deal with effectively 30 companies which we have concerns about that aren't paying their fair share of tax in Australia. And that will come with additional resources as well. Now, let's wait and see that draft legislation. The details will be contained within there, but this is potentially worth, considerable amounts of money for the budget. The revenues are being made, the profits are being made in Australia, and we think that where the revenues are made, the taxes should be paid.
All right, now it is hard to avoid Scott Morrison. He's been on all the airwaves today and yesterday. He was announcing the big budget policies alongside the PM, yet the Treasurer perhaps looked very much relegated.
I wouldn't say that, Helen. I think this is a bit of a beat-up, this story. The Treasurer has been absolutely fundamental and pivotal to the creation of this year's budget, as he was last year. He'll be delivering, of course, the budget speech tomorrow night and formally handing down the budget to the Parliament. He's been making further announcements today. But of course, we've also got people like Scott Morrison who have got very significant measures in this budget, and he's been out there announcing those measures which are within his portfolio. That's perfectly reasonable. That's perfectly
yeah, but he's been centre stage. You'd have to agree that the optics, as they say, that most voters would take from that? They've seen Scott Morrison talking about these big picture budget policies. Now, is there a feeling that Scott Morrison should be Treasurer among your colleagues?
Helen, Scott Morrison is a fantastic minister, along with many of our other fantastic ministers. Joe Hockey is the Treasurer. He's been doing a terrific job. He'll be tabling the budget tomorrow night in the House of Representatives, and then we'll be leading the budget communications task in the days subsequent to that. Scott Morrison, yes, has been in the media quite a bit, predominantly because many of the measures which have been announced to date have been within his portfolio, and that's the primary reason.
All right, Alan Tudge, we wait and see what is in the budget, or what's left in the budget. A lot has come out. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks so much, Helen.
And next we'll see what the Greens think of key budget measures. Senator Larissa Waters will join us. Stay with us.